rebirth. And when they hear that a person remembers their past life, they go and question him. So it seems there was one case of a person, he remembered that when he died, he took form of a small being, a few inches only, and he didn't know where to go. And then he saw his funeral, everything, And after that he was wandering around, he didn't know where to go for a few days. Then one day he saw somebody whom he recognized to come from the sister's house. That person maybe went to market or something and is going home with the basket. And then this being, he jumped into that basket and it seems he was reborn as the sister's son. So, I mean, that's what he remembers. So, it's interesting.
But just now you mentioned about the Gandhava. So for conceptions to take place, the consciousness must be present. So how do you differentiate the Gandhava and the consciousness?
The Gandhava, you can consider it to be a kind of being, because the Buddha says that when you have a being with consciousness, it must come together with the five aggregates. You cannot have consciousness without the five aggregates. So it's actually a being. But because it's a temporary being, the Buddha does not classify it as one of the five destinations of rebirth, because it's only temporary, maybe only for a few days or for a few weeks, and then it will enter the womb. So it has consciousness. So when it enters the fertilized egg, in the sutta they call it the descent of consciousness. Descent of consciousness into that egg. So once it descends into that egg, then it will have the six senses. Then it's aware. It's an egg in the womb. It's aware of the surroundings. So when that egg, that fertilized egg, when the consciousness enters, that is become a being already. So if you, after that, if you perform an abortion, that's a killing of a human being.
Because I was wondering how some of the Mahayana practitioners, they observe not eating after midday, and they also practice not using honey. But whereas some they just open, they just take meals any time of the day. What I'm talking about monks.
Are you talking about monks? Monks and nuns.
Where some they don't even practice 8 precepts. Afternoon is duty, so they go about having supper and whatnot, and then they enjoy those expensive tea and all those things. So there's something wrong with discrepancy even within the tradition.
I think that rotten monks and nuns, they are present in all traditions and in all religions. So that cannot be helped, the rotten eggs. But the motive of a person wearing the robe is very important. There are some people, they wear the robe as a means of livelihood, so that they have an easy life, they don't have to work. People just bring food to them, they don't have to slog so hard, and sometimes they get very good offerings. Although like in the different sects of Buddhism, this is found, but there are certain sects where it's more pronounced. For example, like in Chinese Buddhism, in Chinese Buddhism, because the peculiarity about Chinese Buddhism is that the monks and the nuns have been forced by the Emperor of China in the year 511 to become vegetarians. So after they became vegetarians, they found that they have to cook themselves, they have to look for money to buy food, because they are not able to go on alms round. Once they become vegetarians, it's not practical to go on alms round. Nobody's going to provide you with vegetarian food. So then, as a result of taking vegetarian food, they found that at night they get hungry, because vegetarian food digests very easily, and even you take breakfast and lunch, by night you get hungry already, unlike taking of meat. So it is generally true that most Mahayana monks and nuns, probably 90% of them or more, they eat at night. And sometimes they eat openly also. They even go for dinner with lay people and eat from the same dishes and all that, which is not allowed by the Vinaya. So because of relaxing the rules, they find that that's the danger with relaxing the rules. Once you start relaxing one rule, then you relax another, and very soon you are not able to keep any rule, because people take for granted that these are not important. So that's why they start talking about fang pian fa men, expedient means, provisional means. But the problem is fang pian fa men becomes sui pian fa men. Anything boleh, anything can do. So that's the problem. And this vegetarian practice is not a Mahayana practice. It is a Han Chuan Fo Jiao. It's peculiar only to Chinese Buddhism, because you have other branches of Mahayana Buddhism, like Tibetan Buddhism. They don't practice vegetarianism. So it's only peculiar to China and those places like Vietnam, because they are influenced by China, then also or South Korea. So that's the thing.
During the regular fasting travel, in those days, the Mahayana and the Theravada, they eat together in the same monastery, they eat together, they learn from each other together. At that time, they learned a lot of learning. And according to the Theravada Vinaya, is that they don't practice the same Vinaya, you don't eat together or eat together in the same area. So I presume that in those days, they do practice the same standard, I suppose.
But hard to say, because that was long after the Buddha passed away, whether they actually kept the Vinaya or not, we don't know. But like in Tibetan Buddhism, a lot of external sect practices have crept into Tibetan Buddhism, because Tibetan Buddhism started only 1,200 years after the Buddha passed away. So things like Tantric Buddhism, which comes from Tantra Yoga, where the master and the disciple can make love and all these things. It's taught in the teachings, but it's totally against the Buddha's Vinaya. So this is one of the things that caused the downfall of Buddhism in India. So the Buddha always stressed that we have to uphold the Vinaya and practice the Dhamma. That's why the Dhamma Vinaya is our teacher. So you cannot say that you want to practice part of the Buddha's teachings, you don't want to practice another part. So that will cause a disappearance of the true Dhamma. And unfortunately, all these wrong practices and wrong teachings are not peculiar to one sect. They are found in all forms of Buddhism, even Theravada Buddhism. Theravada Buddhism now is also very much corrupted by later books like the commentaries and Abhidhamma and all that. So that nowadays people don't talk about attaining the jhanas. But in the Buddha's time, the jhanas are extremely important. Yeah.
Some clarification. When we renounce Mahayana, he is very effective in the practice. He doesn't accept dana offering. She works to earn her living. So in one of the biographies she wrote about when she was just become a nun that time, because there's no meat to, she would cultivate her own food. So what she do is she would go to the field and pick up the things that's left over, like sweet potato and all this cook for the meal. They said picking up from somebody's farm, they said the monk is stealing.
It can amount to stealing if they did not give her permission and they are not happy that she took those things. But you see, that's the danger of some people. Instead of following the Buddha's instructions and depending on the Buddha's wisdom to guide us, some people, they want to use their own wisdom. They think they are very smart. But they are not smart. The Buddha wanted monks and nuns to rely on lay people for their food so that the lay people would have a means of getting blessings, merit. That's why in the monk's Vinaya, it's not allowed for a monk to go deep into the forest and live like, for example, a Hindu ascetic and live off the roots of the trees or live off the fruits and all that and survive in the deep jungle. The Buddha did not allow that. The Buddha said a monk must come out and beg for his food. After getting your food, if you want, you can go into the deep forest to meditate. But every day you have to come out and beg for your food. That's because the Buddha wants the lay people and the monks and nuns to interact so that they benefit each other.
I think in this case, because she is a Mahayana nun doesn't go for Amusram, and she doesn't accept dana. The only principle, so I think it's caught in
If she had studied the Buddha's words in the earliest Nikayas and in the Vinaya, she would not come to that conclusion, because she didn't study, so probably she thought she was doing the right thing. In fact, we find in the Suttas sometimes external sect ascetics, they are very proud of their teaching, they are very proud of their sect, of their religion and all that, and they come and argue with the Buddha. And then they argue with the Buddha, and finally the Buddha defeat them and convince them of the Buddha's teachings. Then they realize, you know what they realize? They realize they thought that they were monks before. They said now they realize they were not monks before. They thought they were practicing the holy life, but now they realize they were not practicing the holy life. So you see, sometimes you use your own wisdom. You think you are doing the right thing, you are doing the wrong thing. That's why it's very important to rely on the wisdom of a Sammasambuddha. That's why sometimes people come and learn from a teacher. They are not willing to give up their own preconceived ideas. They think they are smarter than the teacher. That's the problem. When you learn from a teacher, you have to give up some of your views. Like the Buddha says in the Sutta, the Buddha told one of his disciples, when you come to learn, you must always have the view that the teacher knows more than me. Otherwise, no point to follow your teacher. You go on your own. If you think a person is smart enough, no need to follow a teacher. You go on your own. So in the same way, when we are disciples of the Buddha, when the person renounces, he's called the son of the Sakyan, Sakyaputta. So we must always follow the Buddha's instructions. Not like this nun. In fact, in the later, several hundred years after the Buddha passed away, people who use their own thinking, they start creating new teachings, and they call it expedient teachings, Phang Pian Fa Men and all that, which is basically what Mahayana Sutras are about.